Is it working?
Are you there?
Are you there?
Hi.
Did it work?
I think so.
I mean, I see people. I feel like it worked.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. I'm almost out of drink. Cheers to you. I think we did it. I think we're here.
While everybody's still here, in case you start leaving us, be sure and subscribe to this channel. Because just because you're subscribed to our other channel doesn't mean that you're subscribed to this one. And hit the like button. And as you leave, well, you'll have to come back. You have to come back and leave a comment on this episode. Mm-hmm. And I will do a drawing for a little Frank style giveaway.
Ooh, Little Frank.
It's like a little mini mystery package of Little Frank kind of things.
Welcome everybody over here. Yay, you did it, MB.
Yay.
Thanks, Joy. I see all you guys. We got 63 people in the house. I feel like that's pretty great. I feel like that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Okay, so this is the first episode of the podcast, guys. We are going to be reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This book that I'm holding in my hand also has Through the Looking Glass. I say we read that too. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. And, of course, this is written by Lewis Carroll. So
Hi, Katie Garnett.
Nikki, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Katie, we're reading a book. Are you excited? This is my Katie.
So this edition was published in 2009 that I'm holding.
Gosh, it looks older than that.
Doesn't it?
I really thought it was a vintage one. You know, I went and got it at the used bookstore in town.
Yeah,
she called me. She was holding it for me.
This was a discard from our public library. So that's kind of cute. But I think this cover is adorable with the flamingos. Love it. We're so glad that you guys are hanging out with us for the very first episode of the Alice in Wonderland podcast.
Yay.
What have you got there?
I've got this little... They told me at the bookstore that they would call me whenever any came in, and 2 came in the very next day,
That's
which
crazy.
I thought was hilarious. So I bought them both because the lady was so nice and it wasn't very expensive. But I thought it would be pretty, to just show the pages and the pictures with the chapters. So if we get to the first chapter, we can go back and look at the pictures in here.
Cute.
But isn't that beautiful?
Cute.
And I just have to admit, this is not one, everybody knows about Alice in Wonderland. This is not one that I just read and reread with my kids. Because, I think it's a little over a lot of kids' heads.
True.
Just because, I don't know, it's the way it was worded.
I've never read it. Have you read this?
I've read it, but it's been a while. And
you have read it?
Yeah. But I have to admit that, you know me, I can't remember movies. I can't remember books from 20 years ago. It's every bit of 20 years, if not more.
Have you guys
it's
seen
one of those that you're supposed to know, but I just have to admit that I don't know what really happened.
If anybody in the chat has read this book, say, hey, I've read it. Let us know. Let us know if you've read this book.
I bet you've seen the Johnny Depp Alice in Wonderland.
I have, and I have seen, obviously, the Disney version.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess the Johnny Depp one is Disney, too. But
well, yeah.
I meant the cartoon. Lenny, it looks like Lenny has read this. Let's see. Circle 7 has read it. Susan years ago. And Donna a long, long time ago. Cool.
So I think it'll be fun to reread it at this point, right?
I thought they were yelling at you to read it.
Oh. Read it. Read it.
It's the same word for read and read.
Oh, Tamara says it's one of my favorite childhood books. Katie's read it. Read both of them. Tone TTK never. Okay. Well, I've never read it, so I'm going to be venturing into it with you guys for the first time. The good news is Frankenstein, when we read it, I'll be honest, that was a hard read for me. That was a difficult book for me to read. Mm-hmm. It was written so in that romantic period, and it was difficult for me. So I'm hoping, since this is technically a children's book, that this is gonna be easier for me.
Yeah. Well, it's you know how that is though. It's technically a children's book, but written when 18 something.
Right.
I guess that's the first thing we should tell everybody what year it was written. But
right.
1850s or 1860s.
So anything in the public domain that we're able to read like this is going to be old. So Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was first published in 1865. 1865. That's an oldie.
Yeah, and so it's not going to flow off the tongue. It's not going to roll off your tongue like a modern book would.
Yeah. So those of you who did not read Frankenstein with us, I'm not the best reader in the world. So just so you know, I might fumble over some words. I might mispronounce some words. That's just how it's going to be. You're just going to have to deal with it.
But the point is, it was so much fun to talk to each other about it, and then to see what people said in the comments. And it's just, hopefully for you guys, it's just fun to hear it out loud and to hear people say, "No, wait, did that mean that Alice was really thinking that she did that, or do you think she meant to do something else?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you stop and do that, because if not, sometimes you get in the speed read mode, just like flipping through your phone or whatever is, and all of a sudden you're 10 pages in and you don't know what you read.
Okay, so I just want you guys to know this much of the book is the introduction. I don't know how much of this introduction we're going to read. I don't know if we should read all of it. I don't know what we should do, but this is a big chunk of the book, and it's just the introduction. I mean, we're going to start a little with the introduction, but we might decide to skip it.
Mary Beth, your attention span.
I know.
Well, and then this isn't the whole book either. This is 2 books.
Yeah, this is 2 books in one that I'm holding.
So
let's just jump in right into it.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the introduction. Your introduction will be different if you have a different version of the book, obviously. Don't read it until after Melinda.
Until after what?
Until after, I don't know. After something.
Oh, okay.
All right, here's how this introduction begins. I've got to turn on my podcast voice. No, the adventure is first, said the Gryphon. What is the Gryphon?
It's a griffin.
Why is it spelled like that?
Because it's 1865. Yeah.
Nobody knows that says Griffin. Why is it spelled like that?
Because it's 1865.
It's 1865. Let's start all over. No. The adventure's first, said the Gryphon in an impatient tone. Explanations take such a dreadful time.
Oh, that's so cute. Katie, my daughter just sent me a thing that said that that I had sent her the vintage copies of
Cute.
those 2 books.
Even a joke should have some meaning, and a child's more important than a joke, I hope. So the first line was from the Lobster Quadrille. Quadrille? Quadrille? What does that mean?
I don't know. Is it type of song? Maybe?
So the Lobster Quadrille is saying, no, the adventure's first,
that's
said
what
the
the-
Gryphon in an impatient tone. Explanations take such a dreadful time. So they're making fun of the introduction already. They're like, why are you reading this? You should go to the adventure first. And then Queen Alice is saying, even a joke should have some meaning, and a child's more important than a joke, I hope. I feel like this is going to really be something.
Well, I know you're not the type of person that usually reads an introduction, but I think it's helpful in this case.
Okay.
Just to give us a little insight.
All right. Well, let's just get into this, I think. That was the first couple sentences on the page. And now I'm going to go into this part that says the child, nonsense, and meaning. The adventure's first, says Carol's Gryphon, with his dread of explanations, and all readers know this is the right order. Yet introductions inevitably come before adventures, and introductions tend to mean explanations.
I love that he's trying to talk you into reading the introduction just like I am.
Lots of things happen the wrong way round in these texts. Sentence first, verdict afterwards, shouts the Queen of Hearts. So the reader who share the Gryphon's priorities can always read the introductions after the stories, or not at all. You simply follow the instructions of the King of Hearts. Begin at the beginning and go on till you come to the end, then stop. I feel like they're just like making fun of me. I feel attacked. Do you feel attacked?
No.
Yet,
Because I want to read the introduction. You're the one that doesn't.
Laura loves an introduction. Yet Carol's heroine, at the heart of these adventures, is very much concerned with questions of meaning. When she dreamily finds her way to the other side of the looking glass, one of the first things she encounters is a poem called Jabberwocky. After reading it, Alice remarks, "It seems very pretty, but it's rather hard to understand. Somehow, it fills my head with ideas, she reflects. Only, I don't know exactly what they are.
That's cute. I'm just quelling some concerns out there.
Okay.
Melinda's saying that a lot of times an introduction is a spoiler to the book, but I mean, this book is so well known. I don't think that we need to worry about spoiler alerts or anything like that, because it's just kind of a nonsensical kind of, so, but if you guys are sensitive to that and you want to skip to the next episode where we start chapter 1, then you can do that. But yeah, just be aware it might tell the end of the story or something.
The word nonsensical is in the next sentence. In this respect, the nonsensical mirror poem, Jabberwocky, stands as a mirror of the classic literacy double act of which it is a part. All readers of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, those undisputed classics of nonsense literature, find themselves in much the same predicament as the heroine. Mm-hmm. The stories fill our heads with ideas, but we don't know what they are. All the same, readers tend to divide between those who are content to find the stories pretty, as Alice somewhat encourages I can't say that word. Help me.
Incongruously.
Incongruously. What does that mean?
Well, like, contrary to what she might say, she might feel a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me start that sentence over. All the same, readers tend to divide between those who are content to find the stories pretty, as Alice somewhat incongruously finds that monstrous travesty of a heroic monster slaying saga, Jabberwocky, pretty, and those who want to know what those obscure ideas Alice imitates really are.
Yeah, do you see how that was opposite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Of the verses read out in the courtroom scene of the close of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Alice declares, "I don't believe there's an atom of meaning in it," which prompts the king to reflect. "Well, if there's no meaning in it," said the king, "that saves a world of trouble, as we needn't try to find any. And yet I don't.
I don't know.
And yet I don't know." He went on, spreading out the verses on his knee and looking at them with one eye. "I seem to see some meaning in them after all. Said I could not swim. You can't swim, can you?" he added, turning to the knave. This is a lot. This is a lot for an introduction.
It's just a little quote out of the book.
Yeah, I hear you. But I'm just like, what's happening?
Do you want me to read some?
Yeah, why don't you go?
Okay. You're not enjoying the
here.
introduction.
I might have to skip it. We might have to go to the first chapter.
To read the Alice books is to plunge into a world of narrative distortions and nonsensical explanations, and the reader is perpetually caught between the two contradictory positions adopted by Alice and the king, of finding no meaning in it as she does, or attempting to decode some meaning from it all like the king.
Is there a king in the movie, in the cartoon?
I think so.
I remember the Queen of Hearts, but I don't remember a king.
I think so.
Okay.
Finding meaning, like losing meaning, involves pleasure as well as pain, but then losing meaning, like finding it, does too, as the best nonsense reminds us. In Through the Looking Glass, Alice brings her comparable puzzlement about the Jabberwocky poem to Humpty Dumpty. "You seem very clever at explaining words, sir," she said. "Would you kindly tell me the meaning of the poem called Jabberwocky?" Humpty Dumpty, an egghead absolutely obsessed with meaning, duly obliges with an intellectual confidence rare even among critics of poetry. So here, Humpty Dumpty says this: "I can explain all the poems that ever were invented, and a good many that haven't been invented yet."
Oh.
Maybe Jamie's Humpty Dumpty.
Yes! Wait, I have to write that in the comments. Jamie equals Humpty Dumpty.
He goes on to interpret Jabberwocky according to whimsical fiat on the one hand.
I could explain all the poems that ever were or ever will be.
And a theory of portmanteau words, on the other hand. I don't know what portmanteau words are. Like double meaning words, Nikki said. Okay. This enables him to unpack the different meanings he sees packed into one nonsense word. So that slithy, for example, S-L-I-T-H-Y, can be decoded as an amalgam of lith and slimy.
Okay.
Though authoritative and even seductive as a piece of off-the-cuff philological commentary upon Jabberwocky, Humpty Dumpty's explanation of the nonsense idiom of the poem is as nonsensical as his definition earlier of glory as a knock-me-down argument. It is as much a parody of philosophical and linguistic authority as an instance of it, and as the familiar nursery rhyme warns Alice he will do, this hubristic nonsense commentator comes to a sticky end. So he's like, he's full of himself and yet making fun of things that are full of themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. If the problem of meaning, of what Alice's adventures and what she finds in them means, haunts the text and its heroine, it has also, since the date of its first publication, haunted its readers. So this is like a never-ending thought that people talk about, topic. Though many readers share the adventure's first view of the Griffin, that explanations are a waste of time, others adopt the viewpoint of the Red Queen that even a joke should have a meaning and a child's more important than a joke. In fact, we could classify readers of the books as either griffins or queens. So are you going to be a griffin or a queen?
I don't know yet. I have to figure it out.
You guys say in the comments whether you're griffins or queens.
I think I'm like that caterpillar.
We're not there yet. Those in the first camp simply wish to enjoy the story, as they think appropriate for a book originally written for children, and rebuff all efforts to interpret it.
Okay.
That's the first camp of people.
I am not with that camp.
You're not?
I think this means something.
Oh, I'm surprised that you said that. Those in the second, contrary-wise, insist that it is meaning and not meaningless, which makes Carol's nonsense expressive, and that all readings of the Alice books are necessarily interpretive.
Yeah. Nancy Smith asks a good question. What is a griffin? It's spelled really interestingly in the book.
A griffin is like a lion with wings?
Yeah, I know that, but it's not spelled that way in the book, so I'm wondering if it's a different interpretation of the word griffin.
No.
This spelling is what I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, like,
Okay.
Gryffindor, I think they spell it that way.
Okay.
With Gryffindor in Harry Potter.
All right, so we're saying it's a lion mixed with a
I think so.
eagle. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, the rest of that paragraph was, why should meaningless jokes or meaningless stories be more interesting than meaningful ones?
I just can't get behind that Lewis Carroll would have written this book in a nonsensical way that meant nothing.
Yeah, me either.
I can't get behind that. He's an artist. He's a literary artist, and I don't believe that artists create art with no meaning.
Very nice. Nicely said.
That's my opinion.
Okay. Do we have queens and griffins in the chat?
So which is which?
The griffin is for the read it at face value nonsensically.
Well, I'm
And
the queen.
The queen is for the meaning and the.
I am the queen.
Nobody's surprised about that. Okay. Historically, the Carolian, which they're talking about Lewis Carroll's, they're making that an adjective.
Yeah.
The Carolian editor and biographer R.L. Green falls into the first camp and stands as the prime spokesperson for Griffinism. The poet and critic William Empson stands at the forefront of the latter, or the Red Queen's camp, with his groundbreaking essay on the child as swain, setting the agenda for all subsequent Freudian and historical interpretations of Lewis Carroll's work.
Gotcha.
The editor, Martin Gardner, a mathematician and logician like Carroll, is the ultimate exponent of the Red Queen school of thought, and his masterfully Dumptyian The Annotated Alice explains the Alice books with reference to the whole intellectual universe before and since, and the whole intellectual universe by reference to the Alice books.
Melinda says they are calling it nonsensical, but if one is familiar with British 19th century political history, you can see political commentary. Very good, Melinda. So, I want to know. So, I see some queens in the chat and I see some griffins in the chat. Which are you? Do you think that this is, from the queen standpoint, that this means something? Or are you from the griffin standpoint that think that this is purely nonsensical and childlike?
These divergent approaches to reading the Alice books reflect something of the enigmatic or hybrid nature of the text itself. These are sophisticated fairy tales on the one hand, as Carol announces in the prefatory poem to Wonderland, and they abound in the spontaneous, enigmatic coinings of dreams, slips of the tongue, jokes, and improvisatory free association. On the other hand, they are also riddling, aesthetically highly wrought products of a child-haunted adult, obsessed by questions of meaning, and have something of the eerie perfection of the literary sphinx about them, of Wildian contrivance, as well as the vertiginous spontaneity of improvisation.
Oh, wow.
This is very wordy.
Yeah.
On the one hand, these are two of the few widely acknowledged classics of children's literature, which helped in themselves to redefine the possibilities of writing for children. On the other hand, they are two of the most original experimental works of literary fiction in the 19th century and have had a huge impact on subsequent fiction and culture. Translated by Nabokov into Russian, adopted by the Surrealists as proto-surrealist dream books in France, taken up by T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, W.H. Auden, and more recently Peter Ackroyd as models, the Alice books have been taken to prefigure modernism at its most experimental, as well as children's writing at its most elemental. This double fate may embarrass some readers, but is surely inherent in the stories Carroll wove around his heroine Alice, and surely part of their challenge and appeal to all readers, young and old. In a sense, this dispute represents a reaction to something beyond the Alice books themselves. It represents a dispute about the meaning of children's literature, whatever that is, about childhood and literary representations of childhood, about the relation between books of children and books for adults, about nonsense as a genre and classification, about dreams, and of course about reading. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland originated as a children's story and was marketed as a book for children, yet since the day of its first publication it has always appealed to adults too, and with the Bible and Shakespeare is reputed to be the most quoted of English texts.
Really? You're kidding.
Carroll's two dream books about a 7-year-old middle-class Victorian girl offers themselves as absurd and riddling parables of narrative and linguistic innocence, but they are also allegories of experience, incarnations of philosophical sophistication and perverse intellectual wit, constructed around the adventures of a child.
I've always heard that The Wizard of Oz is the most quoted of all literature, but
Maybe it's the most quoted of all.
Movies. Maybe. So let's stop for a second. I want to read what Colleen said. This intro is like Cliff's Notes. It's polluting our possible interpretation of the books. So maybe we read the intro last.
No, you say that you're a queen, but you're a griffin.
Am I? Is that true?
Well, the griffin doesn't want to read the introduction.
No, I'm not saying I don't want to read it. Maybe I want to read it last. Maybe I want to figure out what I think for myself.
I respect that, but I think that we need like a structure with which to think about it so that we're just not reading this nonsensical thing and not getting anything.
I hear what you're saying. Okay. What do you guys think? Let's vote. Okay. We're going to leave it up to the chat. We're doing this first episode live.
That sounds fair.
So you guys get to have some input here. Do you think we should skip the intro and go into the book? Do you think that we're being polluted? Or do you think we need to stick with the intro? Chapter 1 or intro? All right, let's see what they say.
Okay.
And we'll respect the chat. How's that?
That's great.
I think that Colleen makes a good point.
Sure.
No intro. I don't read the introduction. Skip the intro. Let's see. Skip the intro. Tamara likes the intro. Skip introduction. Read it, please. Intro. Skip it. So I'm getting lots of skips. Skip it. Who wrote the intro? I think it says.
Yeah.
In just a second, we'll find it. Skip it. Enough of the intro. You've already committed. Aaron says, read it. Holly and Alexis say, read it. We're split a little, but I'm seeing more of the skip it. How about we compromise? How about we skip it? It's the intro's long, Aaron. It's really long. Laura, what if we skip it and read it after?
Okay.
Read it after and see what we agree with and don't agree with.
All right. Let me just tell you this much.
Okay.
We've only got like another page and a half of this line of the introduction.
Okay.
Then it skips to biographical about Lewis Carroll.
Okay.
And
well, then let's read it to here.
So let's just finish this part, which is just a page and a half.
Page and a half.
That way
That's a great compromise.
Okay. That way it doesn't feel like we've stopped in the middle of something.
Okay.
Because then it just skips to Lewis Carroll's biography, which people could look up themselves and whatever.
That sounds good. And then we'll start for chapter 1.
Then if we feel like in the meantime, we could see if we find anything of value in there to read after the story. How about that?
That sounds great.
Okay. Let's see. Where were we here? Okay. Who knows, right?
Sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. Okay. What is ultimately at stake in disagreements about the innocence of such children's classics as the Alice books is, I suspect, a debate about the relationship between adulthood and childhood, and where in that complex, troubled, and mesmerizing relationship the interest of innocence is to be found, and in whose interest. Talking about Carol, W.H. Auden wrote that there are good books which are only for adults because their comprehension presupposes adult experiences, but there are no good books which are only for children. In this sense, it is natural for children's books to become adult books if they're any good. Since all adults have been children, books for and about children are always potentially for and about adults too. William Empson has said that the Alice books are about growing up, which is certainly true. They are also perhaps more surprisingly about grown-ups. Alice, after all, is apart from a fleeting baby who turns into a pig and those stuffed archetypical... No.
Where are you?
Archetypal schoolboys, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, the only child in the books at all. Like Henry James's What Maisie Knew, the stories give us not so much an adult's view of childhood as a child's view of adulthood. Seen through the lens of Alice, the world of adulthood is as dismayingly bizarre and perverse as those of Dickens and James. Virginia Woolf resolves the question of readership in a different way. The two Alices are not books for children, she wrote in 1939. They are the only books in which we become children.
Oh.
According to Woolf, his childhood lodged whole and entire inside Dodgson, forming an impediment at the center of his being, which starved the mature man of nourishment, but enabled him in fiction to do what no one else has ever been able to do, return to that world and recreate it, so that we too become children again. This is a large claim and magically dissolves the barrier between adult and child. In Jacob's Room, To the Lighthouse, and The Waves, Woolf herself tries to recreate that childhood world too, so her tribute to Carroll is born out of a sense of affinity. Carroll should be placed with the modernist novelists Proust, Joyce, and Woolf, as well as the Oedipal father of modern childhood, the psychoanalyst Freud, as part of a culture movement placing the child story at the heart of adult culture. The Alice books are children's literature, but also, as much as Dickens' Great Expectations, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, or Henry James' What Maisie Knew, part of the 19th century's expanding literature about childhood. In foregrounding problems of language and meaning, they are as formally disorienting and psychologically searching representations of childhood subjectivity as Joyce's A Portrait of Artist or Wolfe's To the Lighthouse. Adventures in Wonderland suggest fairy tale and romance, but Alice's most parlous adventures underground and through the mirror are intellectual and social rather than physical, dialectical rather than folkloric. The griffin, monstrous crow, and Jabberwocky are comparatively harmless antagonists compared to all the querulous logicians and niggling philosophers of meaning she meets on her travels, all ready to pounce like vultures on any phrase or idiom, however normal, that can be wrested into the discomforting abnormality of nonsense. The author of the Alice books was an Oxford logician, and at every turn of her looking-glass quest, Alice's conversations bring her into close encounters not only with figures from games of cards and chess, like the Queen of Hearts and the White Knight, or from the traditional repertoire of nursery rhymes like Humpty Dumpty and the Unicorn, but with the persistent puzzles, paradoxes, and riddles which haunt the apparently stable mirror theories of language which have dominated the philosophy of the West. The guy is brilliant that wrote this. It's
for sure.
He didn't just make stuff up, right?
Absolutely.
The question of the meaning of nonsense haunts Alice and many of her interlocutors. This means people that she talks to, but it's really dreadful. Alice reflects at one point, the way all the creatures argue, it's enough to drive one crazy. Many of these maddening arguments concern the questions of meaning, identity, names, logic, and the philosophy of language, which have vexed philosophers since Plato. The 7-year-old Alice is caught up in a series of bad-tempered, dialectical duets which call in question or put into play the conceptual foundations of her world. It is no wonder that the relation between children, jokes, and meaning raised by the Red Queen should haunt readers of Lewis Carroll's story.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. That all sounds really good.
I can see that was not very interesting to you. I thought it was really
No,
interesting.
it was extremely interesting.
Yes. But we're forging ahead with chapter 1.
We're forging ahead. We're going to skip ahead. Chapter 1, down the rabbit hole. We do have a few illustrations in this book.
Erin says, Googling a lot tonight. It's like college. I know, right? Melinda's helping us out, though. Interlocutor. It's easy to read those words and not so easy to pronounce them sometimes.
I agree.
I know what they mean, and it's people who speak for her. Yeah. Not just to her, but speak for her.
All right. We're going to begin with chapter 1, down the rabbit hole. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversations? So she was considering in her own mind, as well she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. And don't forget, if you've got a copy of this book, read along with us. Mm-hmm. That'd be great. A white rabbit, Laura. My first question, is that white rabbit really there?
Interesting.
There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late.
I'm going to be late. That's me. I could be the white rabbit.
When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take it out of. And burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it and was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. So automatically, I think she's dreaming. Because when you're dreaming, things seem normal that are not normal every day.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Shannon, good question. We gave the audience a choice, Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz, and the audience chose Alice in Wonderland.
Overwhelmingly, actually.
Overwhelmingly. And also, we have to choose something that's in the public domain. We have to choose an older book because of copyright issues.
And we thought it just might be fun because it's kind of weird and crazy, you know.
That's right. In another moment, down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was going to get out again. So she didn't even think about it. She's just like, plop, let's I mean, they're getting right to it. This is like the 4th paragraph.
Yeah.
She's hopping in.
Yeah.
She's all in.
She's all in, man.
She didn't even think about it.
She can't go back.
If you see a rabbit pop out a little watch and it's like, oh God, I'm late, I'd follow it. Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm very cautious. I would not.
You wouldn't follow a rabbit with a waistcoat?
Well, I guess I probably would. I'd be like, wait, what's that?
The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way, then dipped suddenly down. So suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep well. That wouldn't be good.
Now she's done it. Now she can't get back out.
She's done it now. Either the well was very deep or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First she tried to look down and to make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there she saw maps and pictures hung on pegs.
That's cool.
She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed it. It was labeled orange marmalade, but to her great disappointment it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody underneath, so she managed to put it onto one of the cupboards as she fell past it.
She's falling.
But she's so considerate. She's like, oh God, if I drop this, it's going to kill somebody under there. So she's like falling. And
most
she's like,
kids wouldn't think of that.
That's true. She's very considerate. Good for her.
Yeah.
Good for her. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll think of me at home. Why, I shouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house. Which was very likely true. Oh, she's so prim and proper, though.
Uh-huh.
She's like, well, right?
Yes.
I love the language of these
Aaron
books.
says, do you think that the movie Labyrinth borrowed the screen for their falling scene?
It's a very good question, and I would say yes. I think that nothing is really original after some point. I think everything is borrowed. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time, she said aloud. I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see. That would be 4,000 miles down, I think. For you see, Alice had learned several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom.
I started to say she's very well trained.
I wouldn't know that at 7.
I don't think I know it now.
I could barely tie my shoes at 7.
I don't think I knew that now.
For you see, Alice had learned several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom, and though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, there was no one to listen to her. Still, it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance, but then I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got to. Do we think that she's like really pretentious, though? Like, what latitude and longitude are we? Come on, Alice, you're falling down a hole. Get with it. Alice had not the slightest idea what latitude was, or longitude either, but she thought they were nice, grand words to say.
There you go.
So she's pretentious.
She's faking it.
She's trying to seem smarter than she is. Oh, I wonder. She's falling. Mind you, she's falling. And she's like, I wonder what longitude and latitude. Come on, Alice, get with it. She's definitely dreaming. Nobody has time to think about that if they're not dreaming.
Yeah, I
Do you agree?
I think it's a given. Yeah, I think that we know that she's dreaming. Yeah.
Presently she began again. I wonder if I fall right through the earth, how funny it'll seem to come out amongst the people that walk with their heads downwards.
She's like her fan.
Yeah. What is this word? The antipathies?
Yeah.
What does that mean? No, the antipathies, I think.
Just finish the sentence and then I'll tell you.
So it says, the antipathies, I think. She was rather glad that there was no one listening this time, as it didn't sound all the right word. But I shall have to ask them what the name of the country is, you know. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand or Australia? And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Do you think you could manage it? And what an ignorant little girl she'll think for me asking. No, it'll never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. So
I don't think that she was using the right word.
I think you're right.
You know?
I think you're right.
But she was imagining people, you know, like here's the earth. She was just imagining people with their feet up this way and their heads down when she pops out.
Down, down, down. There was nothing else to do, so Alice soon began talking again. Dinah will miss me very much tonight, I should think. Dinah was the cat. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Dinah, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air. I'm afraid but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But do cats eat bats, I wonder? And here Alice began to get rather sleepy and went on saying to herself in a dreamy sort of way, do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes do bats eat cats? For you see, as she couldn't answer either question, it didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah. And was saying to her very earnestly, now Dinah, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? When suddenly, thump, down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, and the fall was over.
Have you ever heard that? Everybody dreams of falling, but
yeah.
Isn't there a rumor or a myth that if you ever land in the fall that you die?
I don't know.
You've never heard that?
Maybe. Maybe so. But she's absolutely dreaming. Yeah. She's thinking about her cats. Do cats eat bats? Do bats eat cats?
Yeah, and she's dozing in and out, yeah.
This is definitely a dream.
Yeah.
Alice was not a bit hurt. So she's fallen for years, but she's not hurt. Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped up to her feet in a moment. She looked up, but it was all dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight.
Oh.
Hurrying down it. There was not a moment to be lost. Away went Alice like the wind, and was just in time to hear it say as it turned a corner, "Oh, my ears and whiskers, how late it's getting." She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, which was lit up by rows of lamps hanging from the roof. I think I would follow a rabbit. Especially if it was like complaining about being late.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
The big gust of wind. There were doors all around the hall, but they were all locked. And when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever going to get out again. Suddenly she came upon a little 3-legged table, all made of solid glass. There was nothing on it but a tiny golden key, and Alice's first idea was that this might belong to one of the doors in the hall. But alas, either the locks were too large or the key was too small. But at any rate, it would not open any of them. However, on the second time round, she came upon a low curtain that she had not noticed before, and behind it, a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight, it fitted. Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage, a small passage not much larger than a rat hole. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you ever saw.
Oh, my.
How she longed to get out of that dark hall and wander out amongst those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains. But she could not even get her head through the doorway. And even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it would be of very little use without my shoulders. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could if only I knew how to begin. For you see, so many out-of-the-way things had happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things were indeed really impossible. So she's like, hey, I have fallen down this huge hole. There's a rabbit with a waistcoat and a watch. Probably I can fit through here if I want to. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or at any rate, a book of rules for shutting people up like telescopes. This time, she found a little bottle on it, which certainly was not there before, said Alice, and tied round the neck of the bottle was a paper label with the words, "Drink me," beautifully printed in large letters. It was all very well to say "drink me," but the wise little Alice was not going to do that in a hurry. "No, I'll look first," she said, "and see whether it's marked poison or not."
Oh,
Look at her. She's
thinking,
smart.
Alice.
She's looking for the poison labels. She's like, I'm not going to drink this. I might have to call poison control. I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
For she had read several nice little stories about children who had gotten burnt and eaten up by wild beasts and other unpleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them, such as that a red-hot poker will burn you if you hold on too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife, it usually bleeds. And she had never forgotten that if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certainly to disagree with you sooner or later. What a smart girl.
Yeah, I'm just giving them a little visual here.
What a smart girl she is.
She's so smart for 7.
Is she really 7? Is she really 7?
Yeah.
I don't think we've heard that yet.
Yeah, we have.
Did it say that at the beginning?
Yeah, and all her 7 years or something.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it referred to it.
However, this bottle was not marked poison. So Alice ventured to taste it, finding it very nice. It had, in fact, a sort of mixed flavor of cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and a hot buttered toast. She very soon finished it off. Lots of stars. What a curious feeling, said Alice. I must be shutting up like a telescope.
Oh.
And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high, and her face brightened up at the thought that she was now the right size for going through the little door into the lovely garden. First, however, she waited for a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. She felt a little nervous about this, for it might end, you know, and Alice said to herself, in my going out altogether like a candle, I wonder what that should be like then. Then she tried to fancy what a flame of a candle looks like after the candle is blown out, for she could not remember ever having seen such a thing. Oh, she's so thoughtful.
Yes.
I wasn't thoughtful at 7.
That's kind of a meaning of life question. It's like, what is there after it's all gone? If I get snuffed out like a candle,
Yeah, if
What's it gonna
I
look
just
like?
keep shrinking into nothing, what is nothing?
yeah.
Dang, Alice, you be so philosophical. After a while, finding that nothing more happened, she waited it out. She's very practical.
Yeah.
She's very good.
Yeah.
After a while, finding out that nothing more happened, she decided on going into the garden at once. But alas, poor Alice.
There you go. But alas.
Mary Beth's
Poor
favorite
Alice.
word,
Alas.
When she got to the door, she found she had forgotten the little golden key.
That did it.
And when she went back to the table for it, she found she could not possibly reach it. She could see it quite plainly through the glass, and she tried her best to climb up one of the legs of the table, but it was too slippery. And when she had tired herself out with trying, the poor little thing sat down and cried. She wore herself out.
Yeah, there's nothing she could do about that.
It's like, you got to take your stuff with you.
And if you don't learn anything else from this book,
that's right.
grab the key. Alice, why didn't you just hold on to the key?
Come, there's no use in crying like that, said Alice to herself rather sharply.
Oh, Alice said that.
She's getting onto herself. I advise you
She's
to
pulling herself together.
I advise you to leave off this minute. She's talking to herself. Her parents must talk to her that way. That's why she's doing it.
Yeah.
She generally gave herself very good advice, though she seldom followed it. Oh, so she's practical and thoughtful, but she doesn't care. She doesn't want to follow her own advice.
Well, yeah.
She generally gave herself very good advice, though she seldom followed it. And sometimes she scolded herself so severely as to bring tears to her eyes. And once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet she was playing against herself. For this curious child was very fond of pretending to be two people.
Oh.
Interesting. I'm going to read that again. But
I
think she is schizophrenic.
Oh, well, funny you should say that, because Irish Girl just said one idea about the book is that it's about society's stigma surrounding mental health, and that each character represents a type of mental illness. Alice, paranoid schizophrenia.
I didn't read that yet.
White Rabbit, anxiety.
I just want to say that I came to that by myself. I didn't read Colleen's comment yet. I'm going to read that again. But she is saying that she sees herself as two different people, like Castor and Pollux. Okay? She's like a Gemini. She's got two different sides of herself that she's battling with. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Come, there's no use in crying like that, said Alice to herself rather sharply. I advise you to leave off this minute. She generally gave herself very good advice, though she seldom followed it. And sometimes she scolded herself so severely as to bring tears into her eyes. And once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet she was playing against herself. For this curious child was very fond of pretending to be two people. But it's no use now, thought poor Alice, to pretend to be two people. Why, there's hardly enough of me left to make one respectable person. She's crazy. She's crazy at 7 years old.
Aww.
Soon her eye fell on a little glass box that was lying under the table. She opened it and found in it a very small cake, on which the words, "Eat me," were beautifully marked in currants. Well, I'll eat it, said Alice. And if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key. If it makes me grow smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden, and I don't care which happens.
Yeah, it's got to do something.
Something's got to happen.
She's talking herself into it.
But she's not worried about poison anymore. She was worried about poison the first time. That's out. She's like, at this point, it's going to make me bigger or smaller.
I started saying, at this point, she's like, I got to do something here.
Yeah. She ate a little bit and said anxiously to herself, which way? Which way? Holding her hand on the top of her head to feel which way was growing, and she was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. To be sure, this is what generally happens when one eats cake. But Alice had gotten so much into the way of expecting nothing, but out of the way things to happen. I'm going to read that again. To be sure, this is what generally happens when one eats cake. But Alice had gotten so much into the way of expecting nothing but out of the way things to happen that it seemed quite dull and stupid for her life to go on in the common way. So she set to work and very soon finished off the cake. More stars.
Yeah. So one bite didn't do it. So
yeah. So I think that's an ending spot. We've been doing this for an hour.
That's chapter 1.
Yep, that was chapter 1. So now next episode will be chapter 2. So what are you guys' thoughts so far? My first impressions of Alice in this very short first chapter is that she is mentally ill, even as a young child. Or she's got a very active imagination and she's dreaming.
Well, yeah, I think that she is left alone a lot. So I think she's like in a house full of adults. And she runs around talking to herself because she doesn't want to listen to the adults all day long. You know, so she's like talking to herself while she's playing croquet with herself. Nobody takes time to pay any attention to her.
Yeah. So I don't know what day we're going to post these going forward. Obviously, this is a Friday night. Laura and I will talk about it. We probably won't do these in future live. We'll probably pre-record them and post them ongoing.
I have a great idea.
Okay.
They like to chat amongst
Maybe we should do it live.
Well, they like to chat amongst themselves in the chat. So we could always set it as a premiere.
Yeah.
So it'll premiere at a certain time. The chat will be available. And then it'll just go on and post.
Yeah.
We don't have to be there. We can pop in if we want to, but if we have other things to do, we don't have to be there. But they all have each other to chat with.
Okay. So, Deb, it's like an hour already? I know, right? So this is a good...
They like it live, though.
Okay. Well, maybe we should do it live. I'm cool with that.
I mean, why not, right?
Why not? So this is a great opportunity. We'll probably do this again in a week or so, the next chapter. So... This is a great opportunity for you guys to grab a copy of the book if you want to. You could probably check it out at your local library or find it at a used bookstore. It's just a great...
Yeah.
It's great. It's fun to read along. And then you can call me out if I mispronounce something or skip something. Was this fun?
Oh, yeah. I loved it.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's see what a few people are saying. I think she had an older sister. Yeah, I think the sister was hanging out with her when she ran away with the rabbit. Do it live. Could do instead of the game on Friday. Okay. I enjoyed it. I never read the book. I never read the book or watched the movies. Cool.
Well, make sure that you hit the bell.
Love this.
So that you'll be notified, because if we do, we can try to do it live, but we can't promise it's the same time all the time. Right.
True. We'll
what if something comes up?
We'll get in the groove and try to figure out a good night to do it and a good time to do it.
Because they all like the live thing.
Maybe have a dictionary at hand. Rosanna, that's a great idea. Great idea. My girl Alice isn't crazy, though. All right, Erin. We'll see. All right, guys. We had about 80 of you so far tonight, so I think that's fantastic.
80?
Yeah,
or 8?
80.
Oh, okay.
So if you haven't subscribed to this podcast channel, make sure you do. That way when we continue this podcast and go forward, you'll be notified and you'll be able to hang out with us and move forward. Love this. Read live if you can. Okay. We haven't done this live. I mean, we did a few live Frankensteins, but they weren't all live.
No, not at all.
Okay, well, if you like it live, we'll do it live. All right, guys. Well, that concludes tonight. It is 11 o'clock here, so we are going to call it a night. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thanks for coming over from Flippin and Sippin. If you are finding us in podcast land, come over and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Fatbird Finds or Fatbird Finds Podcast. We'd love to have you here. Mm-hmm. Thank you all so much for listening, for watching, for reading along. And Do you want to say anything before we take off?
No, I think that's it. I think we're going to do our best to do live. If we can't do it live, we'll make it a premiere, and you guys can chat amongst each other, and then we'll try to get on track again with the live. So
That sounds great.
I mean, we have to do it anyway in one take, so it might as well be live, right?
True.
Okay.
That's true. All right, give us a like before you take off. If you watch this later, make sure you leave us a comment and let us know what you think about live versus pre-recorded, or what nights you think are good. Just let us know in the comments below.
And if you can't wait for the next one, I recommend that you go back and watch Frankenstein, because it's really, really good.
Frankenstein is good.
It's really fun. And it's spooky time of year.
If you missed that podcast, I promise you might be thinking, oh, Frankenstein, that's not a good book.
It really is.
You might be really pleasantly surprised. And we had a lot of fun with Frankenstein. So Frankenstein is also on this channel if you want to go back and watch that. Guys, have a great night. Have a great weekend. We're going to take off.
Come back and comment on the video,
Yes.
so that it gets, some traction, and I will draw for a couple of little prizes.
All right, guys, make sure you stay tuned to see what Fatbird finds next. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.